Hey, welcome back to day 13 of your 30-day Pilates journey. Today we are slowing it down just a little bit after that lovely plank practice that we had yesterday and talking a little bit about our containers and bringing it into our movement practice. Your containers are like the Pilates box. It's a teaching tool to help you be your own teacher and self-correct yourself as you move so that you can become more aware of the big masses of your body and the weight that they hold in order to just have more body awareness overall and move better when we start to move those containers. So we're going to start in a seated position. I'm going to turn to the side just so you can see me. And when we're talking about containers, there are three of them. We have your pelvic container, your ribs, and your head and neck container. So I believe they're called containers because you want to think of them being stacked one on top of the other. So just go ahead and sit in a comfortable position and take a moment to close your eyes. And we're just going to zip up lightly through the powerhouse, putting your tight belt on and also knitting down into that vest. And then adding a little bit of that, I want you to lift up through the top of your head, kind of as if your head was a balloon, like a hot air balloon floating up towards the sky. That will just help you elongate your neck and pull your ears right over the top of your shoulders. And we're already beginning to kind of align and stack the containers one on top of the other. Your pelvic container, the lowest one, is rooting down into the floor. Your rib cage is stacked above your pelvis, and your head and neck are stacked above your rib cage. So you have those three big body masses, and they're just in one line with each other. They're connected, and each of them moves with their own weight and range. And usually when you're a beginner Pilates practitioner, you don't really think of the tiny details like that. It's really great to get the movements down. But today we're going to start to break down some familiar movements that we do into little micro movements, but effective movements to help you gain more awareness through these containers. So we'll just take a couple of breaths here. You can start to tap into your accordion breath, letting the rib cage expand out to the side walls as you keep that tight jacket zipped up from pubic bone to belly button. Your belt really tight around your true waist, and your vest laced up the top, and then your head floating up towards the ceiling like a hot air balloon. Good. And we're just going to start with our head as a container and do an exercise called subway head. So what you'll do is just drop your head down as if you were riding the subway, or maybe riding a bus or in a car if you're not a New Yorker, and you suddenly nod it off. So the weight of your head will reach forward and the rest of your spine easily follows. Head drops down and the rest of your spine follows. So I want you to take a couple of these, really letting the head just fall as if you were actually nodding off to sleep and getting a sense of how heavy your head is. It's about 15 pounds, 13 to 15 pounds, depending on the size of your dome. Big brains all around. So our heads are very heavy. Just keep dropping that head down and letting your spine follow and just rolling slowly up, letting your head be the last thing to come up. We'll do a couple more like that, dropping the head down, letting the weight pick back up with ease. One more time, dropping the weight down. Whew. And you might have noticed that your ribcage container follows the weight of the head. So now we're going to take that into, go ahead and open your eyes. We're going to take that into an exercise with Pilates that we know and love, the spine stretch forward. So I'm going to have you actually just take your fingertips down onto the mat in between your legs, and we'll start with that subway head, just dropping the weight down and then feeling how
Your rib cage follows the weight of the head as you continue to bend forward. And then pause right before that pelvis starts to lean forward. So you're still anchoring your sit bones down. And then we'll start to roll back up, stacking the rib cage above the pelvis, zipping up the tight jacket, and then finally stacking the head above the ribs. We'll do that one more time, dropping the head down, letting the rib cage follow. The top of the head is leading the way down towards the mat. And then stacking that spine all the way up, pulling abdominals in, and then letting the head come up to the top. Good. Now we're going to mess with the ribs a little bit with some rib cage isolations. So I'm going to turn towards you so you can kind of see what's going on. And this ties in nicely to our accordion breath and to what is called a one lung breathing, which is a nice practice to really help you tap into that accordion breath. So I want you to start simply just by breathing into your accordion breath, in through your nose, out through your nose, keeping your tight jacket on and letting your rib cage expand out to the side and then back in towards your midline on each exhale. And then we're going to start isolating the ribs. So the ribs will move laterally to the side so that on your inhale, this right rib fills up a little bit deeper than the left rib because you're kind of leaning it over. You're not really able to breathe into that space because it's more or less collapsed. And then you can exhale and pull it back to center. Let's stay on this right side, or if you're to the left mirroring me, that's fine. So first side, we'll inhale into the direction that we're going, and then exhale to center. And you can use your hands as a guide. I like to push myself over a little bit with this arm on the opposite side. Inhale, we go over. Exhale, we bring it back in. Inhale, we go over. And exhale, we bring it back in. One more time. Inhale, we go over. And exhale, we bring it back in. And again, we'll inhale and go over to the other side. This time it's onto that second side. This side is hard for me. And exhale, pull it in. And you might feel like you're not really able to isolate your ribs. You might feel kind of tight in that lateral flexion. We call that lateral flexion of the side. When we're going out to the side this way. It's kind of tough, but it will loosen up your back for when we do side bends and twisting. Inhale, out to the side. Exhale, center. Let's do one more. Inhale, out to the side. Exhale, center. Awesome. Now let's take the hands behind the head. We'll go back into our spine stretch forward position with legs long and wide, and then we'll just take it over. Let's exhale over, opening up the ribs. Now we're taking the rib cage and the head off of your central axis. So those containers are coming away from each other. And then you'll come back into the center. And then we'll go over, exhaling to your second side. It's amazing how much space, how much more stretch I get after doing those tiny isolations. And back up to the top. Let's go over to the other side again. Reaching over, over, over. And back up one more time to your second side, really working that side stretch. Your box is squared towards the front, hips and shoulders facing forward, and back up to the top. Awesome. Now let's let the arms go. I'm going to have you center up on your mat again and lie down on your back. You can step your feet down to the mat, and then we're going to work with your pelvic container, your pelvis here. So the pelvis is going to kind of curl under so that your tailbone pulls off, and you can press down into the feet and feel that. My low back is pressing into the mat, and then you're going to stick your tailbone out so that you come into a nice arch of the low back, and then you'll be able to fit your hands underneath there. So we'll do a couple and use your hands to kind of feel where you're going and feel how far you're going, and then where you feel that end range of motion where you're tight, curling, and then arching. And that's essentially your pelvis rocking back into posterior tilt and then to anterior tilt if you like those anatomical terms, or you can use the word tuck or round and then arch, which I like because it's a little more accessible. Tuck and round, and then arch, and then go ahead and just settle down into kind of like a neutral space. So now we'll do an exercise called slant board pelvic tilt. We're going to reach the arms long and touch the fingertips to the top of the thighs. And I want you to look up at your hip creases here. So, and find them in your eyes for a moment, then just drop your head down. So your hip creases are going to go up towards the ceiling, and you're going to touch your hip creases to your wrist creases. So the arms essentially stayed in place right where they were as a placeholder, and your hips came up to meet those wrists. And the arms are going to stay right where they are as you roll down through your spine. So we're going to do that pelvic tilt as the basis of the hips lifting. So I want you to come into a curled under position with your pelvis, or a nice posterior pelvic tilt, like you're carving your tailbone under, and that will help you start to lift your hips off the mat so that your hip creases meet your wrist creases. And what that'll do is really get you to work your hamstrings more than if you just went loop to the top, right? We'll do that a couple more times. And then we'll curl it under. See how far you can curl without lifting your hips, and let that curl lead the way so that your sit bones are reaching towards your knee creases and that tail is pulling under until you don't have any space in between hips and wrists. And then we'll roll it back down. And as you do this, I want you to try not to press back into your other containers. Stay nice and centered through your chest wall, through your rib cage, and through your head. Curl deeply under, and then lift, 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 keeping that curl. Don't let it come out. And then go ahead and lower all the way back down. Awesome. Now, that is like the basis of so many things in Pilates. Your roll up, your teaser, that pelvis coming under, that C curve in the low spine, the teaser, the roll up, the shoulder bridge, you name it. Game changer. So practice that as much as you can if you think about it, if you're ever just lying down on your floor. So last thing today, we're just going to lie down flat on the mat here. And I want you to pretend like you are on a floating raft and you're on some lazy river, and this raft is a little bit deflated. So it's kind of soft. So if you were to press one part of your body firmly down on the raft would kind of crease and water would come in through the sides. And we don't want to get wet today, so let's try to avoid that at all costs. So just lie, feeling your containers, feeling your pelvis heavy, feeling your rib cage heavy, your head heavy, and those shoulders too equally weighted. And we're going to bring the shoulders into the rib cage container just for the purposes of this exercise. So what I'm going to have you do is just lift your head off the mat a quarter of an inch. So not too much at all. Maybe just unweighting it, and keep your eyes looking straight up at the ceiling. So we're not doing an ab curl. We're just lifting the head off, and then you'll let that go. And you'll feel that working the muscles in the front of your neck. And we'll do that again. And as you lift, I want you to be mindful that you're not pressing your ribs, your arms, or your seat, your pelvis, any part of your other containers into the mat. They're staying equally weighted and light as a feather so that you're using those front neck muscles to really take that lift and then let it go. You can look from side to side in between if that is feeling really tough for you. We're going to do about 3 more. So as you lift, you'll feel the neck. It's okay. It's okay to work those muscles. You might hear from Pilates teachers that the more you strengthen your abs, the easier it is to do ab curls in your neck. That's half true. Your neck also gets stronger, and that's kind of mostly why it gets easier. So that's kind of what we're doing here, but we're also just picking up the weight of the head with these muscles, because initially that's what you have to do when you do an ab curl, and then trying not to weight any other part of your containers down into your life raft so that you don't get wet. Looking from side to side in between. Let's lift one more time. Lifting off, unweighting that head, and then setting it all the way down, looking from side to side. And then you can go ahead and rock and roll yourself up to a seated position. And I hope that these small movements are kind of connecting some dots for you and just helping you be
a little bit more aware of the different parts of your body and how they connect to each other and how they move. We're going to take that extra awareness into day 14 and beyond as we move towards the second half of this 30-day journey. I will see you tomorrow on the mat.